Welcome back to Big Mouth and welcome to Friday's edition of the dceu Daily. Remember the place to get all this stuff from? Well, here on Big Mouth on the dceu Daily, but you should be following Zack Snyder on the social media platform Vero, as I've just suggested to my brother. Some people have never heard of it. If you follow Zack on this platform, if you haven't heard of it, Vero, remember, you will get all this kind of stuff first. So this is a picture of Batman in his Nightmare Future trench coat. It seems like he's indoors walking up a corridor. Now, could it be, with the Joker picture we had from Zack the other day, that this is him visiting a kind of Nightmare Future Arkham Asylum and he's about to break the Joker out? It could be, everyone. Very, very interesting. I do expect Ben Affleck and Jared Leto to share at least one scene together, which is at least one reason to be excited for Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. And at the bottom, he puts OK. So everyone's telling me now to hashtag OK, right? So you want me to hashtag Zack Snyder's Justice League, hashtag Snyder Cut, and now hashtag OK. And apparently, if I don't hashtag OK, I don't love Zack and I'm not a fan of the Snyderverse. Up yours. I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm keeping in my lane. Mind your own business. But there's another great picture, actually. Nothing to do with Zack Snyder. Seeing I'm a Superman fan, they showed us some screenshots from the first episode of Superman and Lois. This is Tyler Hoechlin as Superman in his costume, flying. And there's nothing more that gives me a geek boner than seeing Superman flying. And this is the latest version of Superman flying. And this is sensational. I don't care if you're a Snyder fan or a Donner fan or you don't like Hoechlin. I think Tyler's a pretty solid Superman. And this looks out of this world. This looks absolutely fantastic. I could look at it all day. So that's brilliant. But we have got a full show for you here on Big Mouth. On Friday's edition of the dceu Daily, we'll be discussing Zack Snyder's comments to Sean O'Connell about accusation that us within the Snyderverse fandom are toxic people. And Zack's very passionate about this. And I tell you what, as usual, he started to trend over this and got the whole of the internet talking. And really, isn't that what we want, even if it's positive or negative? But before we get into all of that, a verified posted this calling Superman a douchebag. And then James Gunn was quote tweeting it, also calling Superman a douchebag doing douchey behaviour. I like James Gunn. He's a great creative, right? Right. So I want to talk about this, right? So let me read to you what's going on here. So Superman is literally getting off with someone. I'm not sure which DC character that is. Right, so she is sitting on the grave, the memorial of Lois Lane, who died while carrying their only child. So basically, I don't know who wrote this. I don't know who did this. And I don't really care. First of all, if we're talking about the story, this is douchey behaviour by Superman. But who goes out and digs this up, right, and starts talking about Superman being a douchebag? Really? Let's just accept that sometimes in life we all behave terribly and we all display flawed behaviour, as Superman does here. Maybe it's part of his grief. Maybe he's on kryptonite. I haven't read this. I don't know if this is a new comic, an old comic. But as usual, the internet will lose its shit over anything. Why don't we just wind our necks in, right? I've done worse in a nightclub down in Ayia Napa. So please. So let's get down to the heart of the matter, everyone. On Friday's edition of the dceu Daily, Zack Snyder calls out the fakers who hated on his Justice League, right, by Sean O'Connell. People have very strong opinions about Zack Snyder, not just about his films either. Snyder over the years has acted as a lightning rod for hot takers about both his content and his actions, amounting to no shortage of columns, features, YouTube episodes, podcasts, and more centered around the Snyderverse. That content seemed to turn its dial to the proverbial 11 setting when focused on Zack Snyder's Justice League, whether commenting on the Lost movie, the reasons for Snyder leaving it, the way that he encouraged his fan base to fight for his Snyder Cut, or the way that Justice League now is going to be released. Everyone appears to continues to have an opinion. I never realised just how controversial a figure Snyder was until I focused my attentions to documenting the fight for his Snyder Cut of Justice League in a new book I have arriving on March the 1st, titled Release the Snyder Cut, the crazy true story behind the fight that saved Zack Snyder's Justice League. In order to unearth that crazy true story, you need to weed through ample amounts of discourse regarding Snyder to find the truth. It made me wonder how much Snyder himself pays attention to the sheer amount of conversation that swirls around himself and his project. Oh, he knows every single word people say. Zack's everywhere. And how he avoids answering back when people are saying that are false or misleading. One such criticism levelled at the Snyder Cut of Justice League for years is that it doesn't exist. There are far too many bloggers who stake their reputations on the fact that the Snyder Cut never would or could see the light of day. So much so that when HBO Max finally confirmed that Zack Snyder's Justice League would be released in March 2020, those same armchair pundits continued to push narratives about toxic fandom being rewarded or this cut not being the Snyder Cut. It's all so exhausting. Yes, it is, Sean. Even for Zack Snyder, after he, alongside his wife Deborah and his co-star Henry Cavill, announced that the Snyder Cut was coming, Snyder spoke with me for the Release the Snyder Cut book. He discussed a wide range of topics, all of which end up in the book. But when we got around to the idea of his fanbase being labelled as toxic, or the release of his cut being a win for toxic fandom, Snyder finally opened up and told me. Right, these are Zack's words now, right? I just think that's sour grapes. I agree. There's really no other way to say it. We know the people who were the architects of that narrative, and it's pretty obvious what their agenda is. Those are people that I've been held back from confronting by wiser people in the room, because I'd love to get at some of these characters. Some direct conversation would be nice. Just to say, one, you don't know shit about what you're talking about, and we can break down everything that they've ever said. I can make a list. There's a few of these guys where I could just get a list of everything they've ever said that they thought was right, and I could tell them every single thing they've said is wrong. Brilliant by Zack. Here's Sean. You could hear Zack Snyder's exasperation as he recounted having to sit back and absorb false information being spread by people outside of his circle. Some might argue that this comes with the territory when you make films. You put them out into the world to be judged, and there's a healthy cottage industry of entertainment pundits who critique, opine, and obliviate. It says obliviate, but let's say obliviate, right? Sounds better. About anything, with Snyder and his DC movies being a popular topic. But as Zack Snyder continued, he asked legitimate questions about the ones whose information had been proven false time and again, as he wondered, here's Zack. And so, in what world do you have any credibility anywhere to anyone? I would love the opportunity to just say to the world and to fandom in general who these fakers are and what should be done to them or with them. It's just a bunch of BS in regards to that toxic fandom, or it's a win for toxic fandom again. In what world does this toxic fandom raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for suicide prevention? How is that toxic fandom? They've probably achieved more than any other fan base and done more good than any other group. So I don't understand. Here's Sean. Nor do I. The charitable work of the Release the Snyder Cut movement often gets overlooked by critics who attack the fan base as toxic. To date, the RTSC family has raised more than $500,000 in charitable donations for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, a cause that is deeply important to the Snyders, as Zack Snyder went on to tell me. There's no denying that the work done by the RTSC community and their monies raised have helped to save lives. That's just a fact. Filmmakers need to have a thick skin. Their art is judged and either accepted or rejected. I have a hard time trying to imagine how Zack Snyder enjoys the amount of scrutiny that surrounds his movies, both those that get traditional release and those who need to fight uphill battles just to see the light of day. His Snyder Cut of Justice League finally will be released on March the 18th, 2021. It will screen on HBO Max and hopefully will receive some form of theatrical release so that fans can witness the IMAX ratios that Snyder fought so hard to include. And if you want to learn more about Zack Snyder and his journey for getting Justice League back in front of his audience, grab a copy, blah, blah, blah. So, again, we're going to get lots of this stuff from Sean. He's going to release little tidbits because this is part of the marketing to get you to buy his book. Listen, I was dubious about Sean in this book earlier, but I'm actually starting to think this is another win from Snyder. I think this book is Snyder's idea. I think it obviously benefits Sean O'Connell. He clearly trusts Sean O'Connell, even though Sean O'Connell and Ray Fisher had some indifference. Ray Fisher accusing him of saying things that weren't accurate, but Ray Fisher would have a fight in an empty museum. So I don't want to put much credence to that. But I do think Zack's behind this book. I do think he wanted a way to say his piece, but he was never going to say it to Access Media or anywhere else. And I think this is a great way of doing it. And if Sean makes some money out of it, why not? So let's ask the question, are you and I toxic fans? Well, nobody sees themselves in a negative light. So let's be clear about this. All communities, all fandoms, all walks of life have people who cross the line, have bully boys and bully girls and whatever they identify as. That's a fact, right? Zack knows this. Zack has spoken to people, fans on YouTube, who are indeed toxic, but he's used them to put his word out, and that's fine. I don't have any issue. There is no question about it. There's about 10% of toxic, I wouldn't even call them fans, toxic people in our fandom. And it's the same with all fandoms, all communities, in all walks of life. So no, our fandom, our group, isn't 100% picking daisies and, you know, saving orphans and picking cats from trees. We can't say that. But I would say the highest majority of us are positive people trying to do good. And all we ever wanted to do was fight for this cunt and for Zack. Now, I want to say something about the Snyderverse fandom, because I think this is important. Most of Zack Snyder's fans weren't on social media for Man of Steel, for Batman vs Superman. They only went onto social media, as they always say, because they're there for Zack. They wanted to fight for his cut, and they want to fight now for the restoration of the Snyderverse. These people are not used to displaying themselves, talking, and probably being in social environments. So when they're triggered, they may swear, they may get angry, they may display themselves in a not too flattering way. But this doesn't make them bad people. It just means that some people are just not used to being around people, talking to people, having arguments in a certain, productive way, constructive way. So sometimes if they're triggered by a blogger or someone, they just, I've done it before. We all bite sometimes on social media. So just because people bite. Now, a few of these bloggers and blue ticks have already come after Zack for saying that we are not toxic fans by saying that we've driven a lot of good people off platforms. This is a lie. We haven't driven any verified off any platforms. Now, don't get me wrong. I can imagine if you're a blogger or blue ticking, you've got a group of people coming after you. It's not very nice, and I sympathise. But while I do sympathise, what did you do? And I don't justify toxicity at all. But what did you say? Did you come after Zack? Did you say something negative? Did you say his films are terrible? Were you disrespectful in some way about him? Were you not constructive about what you were saying? Because it's interesting. When people are constructive about Zack, even if they're criticising him, I notice our fandom have a more constructive conversation with them about it. It's all about you. It's all about how you, in life, it's all about how we start a conversation. And if you are toxic yourself, then you must expect toxicity back. And if you don't want people to be toxic to you, stop waving them towards you. But I would advise my fellow Snyderverse fans to calm it down. If you want to go after people who are criticising Zack or are against us, who are labelling us in false ways, right, be constructive. Once you go after them in an aggressive manner, you become everything they say that you are. There's no reason to go after them. We have won World War I, in a sense, because we're getting the cut, we're getting the film, we're getting a 4-hour movie, right? Now the fight is the restoration of Zack Snyder's DC Extended Universe. That's what we want, to restore the Snyderverse. We must do it in the same way, in a calm way, but we must be everywhere. And we must do our thing. We must use the tactics we've always used. But we mustn't be toxic and we mustn't be bullies. I think back to Dave E. Pienaar and the treatment of me by him. I remember arguing with him about animated Snyder movies. He went to my YouTube channel, what you're watching now, made fun of it, then blocked me so I couldn't reply. And as I said on my channel at that time, I was mystified by him thinking he was superior to me. I'm clearly better looking. I've bagged more elite women than he could dream about while he's playing with himself and using his imagination. And I wouldn't swap that for being an elite YouTuber. So I always found it fascinating that Davey would attack me the way he did when we were just having a constructive conversation about the Snyderverse, and then he blocked me. He didn't like the fact that I quote tweeted him. Well, I quote tweet everyone and I call it being mad micked. And if you can't handle a bit of discourse, my friend, that's fine. But he was complaining about people bringing up old tweets. But of course, Davey isn't going to be a fan of bringing up old tweets. Now, let me be clear and let me have a balance to this conversation. I respect Davey as a YouTuber. I think he does a good job. I think he's extremely funny. But I think it's funny that he came after me, someone who can buy him 100 million times. As I say, I'm very popular with the ladies and I wouldn't swap that for anything else. I mean, look at me and look at Davey. But he came onto here making fun of my channel because it was basic. I don't use a good camera. I don't use a good microphone. And he found a bunch of videos where I had all my kind of clothes hanging on my bedside there. And he said to me, you don't want anyone to watch your videos. Look, I'd love to have 100 million views. But it's a bit like doing the lucky dip, isn't it? On a Wednesday and a Saturday. If you win the jackpot, you win big. But if you don't win the jackpot, you've lost nothing. So Scott Edwards wanted me to show off this picture of Tyler Heckling's Superman with White Canary. So that's a pretty awesome one. He said he would absolutely love her to cross over with him on Superman and Lois, and I think that would be a fun crossover. By the way, all the Arrowverse shows, if you're a DC fan who's a fan of those Arrowverse shows, have all been renewed, including Batwoman, The Flash. Superman and Lois hasn't been renewed, by the way, but the rest have. That's interesting. We'll see what happens with that. That's a bit odd, isn't it? Is it a one-off? Is it a limited series? I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, apart from that, everything has been renewed. So good news if you're a DC Arrowverse fan like Scott Edwards. And this is what he had to say to me. At Movies TV Mad, awesome picture of Clark and Sarah together. Please show this one on the DCEU Daily. I really want to see these two team up in the Arrowverse together. And I think we will. What about you? I don't know. I don't think this year. Maybe in the next autumn's TV Arrowverse schedule, you might hear about more crossovers. It depends about the pandemic, Scott. The pandemic rules us all right now, but thank you for sending that picture to me. Very, very exciting news because Zack Snyder's Justice League will be at the IGN FanFest 2021 new virtual event. So Zack Snyder will be there. There'll be some surprises. There might be some cast members. I did tell you that Zack was running the marketing. I say this every day because you were going, oh, WB, why aren't you marketing this film? Well, it was nothing to do with them. They gave the responsibility to Zack for the marketing for his Justice League movie. It's what he wanted. Everybody's happy. Everyone at Warner Brothers wants this film to make as much money as possible. It is in nobody's interest for a film that's got the Warner Brothers logo on it to fail. So whatever you're hearing from these YouTubers, it is not true. So this is very exciting. So this is the first non-Vero event, if you like, where Access Media are going to have their hands on Zack Snyder and maybe some of the cast. And actually, one of the IGN journalists is asking for your questions. What do you want to ask Zack at this event? This IGN FanFest 2021 virtual event. What questions would you ask Zack? So go over to IGN. I forgot the journalist's name, but she is asking. Follow IGN on Twitter. Very important. Zack will be there. So this is brilliant. Zack's going to be on IGN. Everyone's going to be watching it. He can explain what this film is. He can explain this is a totally brand new 4-hour R-rated Justice League movie. And it will get more subscribers at HBO Max, which is extremely exciting. So please comment down below with your thoughts and questions. Like, share and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more DCEU Daily. See you again soon.